What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with a little round two stream. Going to go through the Draftkings Showdown slate, any of your questions on that end, and then a little look at the PrizePicks board and any of your questions on that side as well. We're here at 12:30, so only 2 hours until lock. So going to keep this a little bit more brief than usual, but still going to make sure we cover everything that we need to here, and hopefully we can cash out here for the next round like we did there for round one. So let's go ahead, share our screen, and we're going to start with a look at the golf course as we typically do. And the course played right about its average. In the past, it had played to a 4.78 under par average, and on round one, 4.77 under par. So spot on that average that we saw there. And I've done a few metrics here, so we'll go over them right now. Yesterday, the birdie or better average was 6.13 birdies. In the past, it had been closer to like 5.5, 5.6 birdies. So this year, at least in the first round, these players were getting after it a little bit more, but you saw a few more double bogeys. So here at hole number 13, you can see 2 doubles or worse. Hole 18, you had a bogey. What was it? Hole 14, 3 bogeys on the scorecard, yet it's still only being a 300-yard hole. You still had plenty of those negative scores mixed in too. So that's why the scoring average stayed consistent, yet the birdie production ended up going up. And when we take a look at the weather here for Friday, it looks beautiful, right? 70 degrees, 10 to 13 miles an hour of sustained winds, which is really nothing to worry about. And the wind gusts aren't all that much higher. They're 13 to 15 miles an hour throughout the day. So in terms of your playing conditions, they should be extremely consistent to what we saw here on Thursday, if not slightly better. And the reason why I say slightly better is players are going to be rusty coming off a 2 to 3 week break. So there on Thursday, it was perfectly reasonable to see a few guys maybe not play as well as they should have. And the fact that it still played 4.78 under par, the birdie or better average was over 6 birdies. I think we could see that improve, right? As players are getting a little bit more into the groove, shaking off some of that rust that they may or may not have had. I'm really positive about the outlook going in here to round two. So whether you're playing on PrizePicks or on Draftkings, I would expect plenty of scoring, which anytime we get elite level scoring, it's going to want to make you take pivots, right? Because these guys let's look at the bottom of the leaderboard, right? We're going to bring up our projections here in just a moment. But all these sort of players at the bottom of the board, we know they're going to be low owned, at least on the Showdown side. Every single time you play Showdown, there's a huge overreaction based on what a player did the day before. So let's look at this. A Sam Burns, a Homa, a Cameron Young, a Patrick Cantlay, JT, Xander, if you really want to get a little bit daring about it. All of these sort of players are going to be extremely underowned, whereas a John Rahm, Morikawa, so on and so forth up there at the top of the leaderboard are going to be well overutilized. So that'll be reflected when we bring up the projections on the ownership side here in just a moment. But as per usual, when the scoring's great, right, what I want to circle back to here is these sort of players at the back have even more opportunity to go out there, and they have to be aggressive, right, to make up those shots. They know that they're already 6 strokes back after day one. Everyone's going to go low here, so they got to take this place nuclear, right? They got to shoot 9 to 10 under par to try and make up 3-4 strokes on the field. So these sort of players have the incentive and definitely the conditions to go out there and take the course super low. So what we'll do next is we'll bring up our projection and hop into this. I can see a few of you down there in chat. What's going on? Do not be shy at all to say hi, first of all. Welcome on in. It's Friday. Let's have some fun here. And feel free to ask any questions, right? If there's anything you guys want me to deep dive, whether it's for Showdown or for PrizePicks, have at it, right? So let's see what we got going on. Burke says, let's get this money. PrizePicks free entry. Yeah, great for reminding everybody. There is a protected play on PrizePicks today. So any flex entry up to $20. If you end up losing it today, which we're not planning on losing today, right? But if we end up losing, you end up getting your money back in promo funds. So that's nice to have in your back pocket. But like I said, we're not planning on losing today, right? So maybe let's turn that into some real funds. Colin says, nice hat. I appreciate it. Yeah, I get a lot of compliments on this hat. My mom got it for me for Christmas. So yeah, hats off to her. Antonio says, live stream caught you off guard. Yeah, we're going to be doing them in the mornings because the golf's ending at 10 p.m. and it's the weekend. So I'm going to be going out with friends, doing what young 20-year-olds do, go to bars and whatnot. So we're going to do the content in the morning. Last night I was at a poker game, actually. I know nobody really cares about my poker game, but won 10 grand last night. So the picks, the live stream definitely had to happen this morning, as I didn't get home until 4:40 a.m. So it was definitely a late night. Oliver says, let's get this man some likes. Hey, I'm not going to beg for him, but I appreciate it, Oliver, doing my marketing for me. I love it. The same weather. Yeah, pretty much the same weather. The one thing I will say is that the wind gust that we just looked at, I talked about it about 5 minutes ago, if you want to circle back and actually catch the full description there, but SparkNotes version. It's about 3 to 4 mile an hour higher winds. So yesterday it was extremely low winds. Today it's moderately low winds. So you would say that maybe the wind's going to be a slightly bigger factor, but it's nowhere close to a range where we have to worry about it, where it's like 15 to 20, 25 miles an hour is really when it starts to get dicey out there. It shouldn't be anything close to that. So yeah, pretty much the same weather. Matt says, great to have PGA back. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for the last 3-4 weeks, I was just like tilt betting NBA and NFL every single night. Like I bet on the NFL, I do a lot of content for it, but I don't usually bet thousands of dollars like on a night of football, right? Like Thursday night football, I'm throwing like $500, $600 on it typically. Last 3-4 weeks, I was playing well above my means for a little bit there. So yeah, I'm glad to have the golf back, because yeah, we nuke golf every single day. I think you guys have a pretty good understanding of that. I have multiple thousands of dollars in golf every day. Antonio says, Cantlay absolutely sold the greens in regulation. He didn't really look awful. He got hooked and he hit 2 fringes. So yeah, he didn't hit the prop, but yeah, I don't think he looked horrible. And is it a Joe Burrow cap? Yeah, right. If he's the GOAT. Obviously Tiger Woods hat, but yeah, hey, Joe Burrow, he looks like a hell of a gamer right now. So let's get into this. Let's hop into the Showdown slate. We're gonna do the prize picks afterwards. And we're not going to talk about every single player here. I just want to draw your attention to some of the things that I think you should keep in mind when building lineups, right? You only got like 2 hours until lock, so let's try and keep this a little bit short. Up top, the chalkiest player on the slate is going to be Jon Rahm. And I wanted to find any reason to fade him. Now, if I was playing in a single entry, I'm not playing Jon Rahm. I'll just say that, because this 45% number, this is for large field GPPs. In single entries today, guys, he's going to be at least 50%. I wouldn't be surprised if Jon Rahm is 60, maybe even higher than 60%, just a little bit over 60%, in some of those high dollar single entry contests. I told you guys yesterday, his line at 67.5 strokes on Caesars Sportsbook was minus 150, right? And that's why I wanted to play him this week. I was like, he's going to be super highly owned, but he kills this golf course. He's so consistent at going out there, just scoring at will at this place, that I have a hard time fading him again. Like the guy has just proven it over and over again. He's the perfect course fit that we're looking for. So at $10,500, maybe don't play him in those super chalky contests where he's going to be 50, maybe even 60% owned. But if you're in a large field GPP, I don't think you have to fade him. I guess that's when I want to go out there and say, but if you do fade him and he doesn't have that optimal performance, you're boxing out half the field. You're boxing out potentially 60% of the field in those single entry contests, which is, that's a pretty good prospect. That's something that if you're trying to play the long-term game, you should probably be doing today. Now, am I fading Jon Rahm? Do I have the stones to do so? No. I'll just tell you that, right? I don't have the stones to go out there and do so. But if you do, it could end up being a pretty solid spot to fade. Moving on to the guys that I really like here. So whether you're playing Jon Rahm or not, I think you should have your eye on these 3 players. That would be a JT Cantlay and Tony Finau. Now, Finau's getting a little bit more ownership than JT and Cantlay, and that's just due to his score yesterday. But I think all 3 have more than enough firepower to go out there and take it low. And I guess especially for the Cantlay and JT there, you're getting huge leverage. 18, 19% for some of these top-end options on Showdown is exceptional when it comes to your leverage. And you got to think, the pricing is so soft when it comes to Showdown. I mean, I guess up top, right, Jon Rahm got a little bit more expensive. But if you look at this 8K range, you look at the top of the 7K range, every player is going to be at least like $200, $300 cheaper than what they were for 4-round contests, if not even more significantly. I mean, look at this. Tom Kim's pretty, consistent when it comes to his price, but Willie Z got a huge price decrease. Sam Burns got a $600 price decrease, so on and so forth down the board. So building lineups, your salary is not an issue when it comes to Showdown. So these players up top are just going to get higher ownership as a result. So this 18, 19%, is really a lot lower than I think most people may realize. So, play 30, 35% in your player pool. Those are great spots to get leverage to. On Tony Finau, I'll say this as well. He couldn't make a putt on day one. He went out there. He hardly gained on the greens with the flat stick, but he had 10 to 15 footer after 10 to 15 footer. I mean, on his first 9 holes, I believe he only had 3 birdies out of his first 9 holes, and he had a birdie look on 8 of the 9 holes. That was realistic, right? That was within like 20 feet, something that you would expect these tour players to make a handful of times, and he didn't make any of them. And he still shot 6 under par. That's the sort of player I'm looking for, right? Jon Rahm, on the other hand, he made a few 40-footers. I mean, I'm kind of talking myself into the Jon Rahm fade here, if you can't tell. He made a bunch of long putts yesterday, whereas JT got robbed a few times. Patrick Cantlay couldn't make anything on his front 9 either. Those are the sort of players that I prefer just because putting is so volatile, right? Ball striking, your iron play off the tee play is relatively consistent from event to event, of course, from round to round as well. There's still variance within that. We know that, right? Players can wake up and have a bad day, but the putting, right, is always random. I mean, even if you have your best stuff, I mean, if you've been out there, if you're a golfer, you guys know what I'm talking about. You can hit the perfect putt and it can miss by 2-3 inches on one way or the other. You can hit the exact same putt and one misses on the left side of the hole and one misses on the right side of the hole. That's just the variance of the sport, particularly on the greens. And there's a lot of physics behind that. That's way over my head. But just understand that if I'm going to take any sort of risk on a player, it's the one that's putting poorly but hitting it well, as opposed to the player that's maybe putting well but not hitting it as well. So moving on into this 9K range now, Viktor Hovland, I like his chances to bounce back. He's not too chalky. Now, he was a lot higher owned in 4-round contests than I think anybody thought. I do a lot of looking around the industry, trying to compare my projections to others just to, make sure I'm on the right page, right? If there's a popular sentiment out there that my projections don't agree with, sometimes we have to reconcile that. And with Viktor Hovland, I think the highest ownership number I saw was like 30% around the industry. He was 35% in the large field GPP. And in some single entries, he was your highest owned player. There was actually a single entry I'm in, the big $33 single entry, where Viktor Hovland was higher owned than Jon Rahm, which is ridiculous, right? If we knew that Hovland was going to be, higher owned than Jon Rahm, everyone would have played Jon Rahm this week. I mean, it would have been a no-brainer. And I think everyone would have faded a Viktor Hovland. So that just shows you why ownership projections are so important. And I think that's one that was really hard to foresee. I guess just, honestly, I think the low ownership projections on Hovland are why everyone got there, right? Everyone saw like 25% around the industry. It was like, oh, that's okay, right? He should be higher owned than that, and played him. And yeah, well, you know what? He ended up being higher owned. So a little bit unfortunate there, but it works out in the long run. Let's see what's going on. We got Antonio says, did you notice Finau's new swing? I guess it's new, but it looks the same. Shot -6, and yeah, he had the 6 putts. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. He had all those putts that he was missing on the front 9. The swing looks the same to me. I had a few people mention it. He posted a story on Instagram where it looked like his swing was a little bit more loopy. It might have just been the angle. And the only reason people are saying it looks like the swing is different is because of that one video. From what I saw on ESPN Plus, it looks the exact same. The ball flight was the same. He still had that prominent left to right ball shape. He was still absolutely drilling the ball off the tee. Yeah, I don't know. The whole Twitter overreactions, it kind of cracked me up, because like people like tweet like, oh, it looks like Tony Finau has a new swing. You saw him hit one ball, right? Like maybe he was trying to hit some cool little shot, right? Like there's times I manipulate my swing to try and hit a different golf shot. I guess particularly if I'm hitting the ball low, my swing looks so much different than the swing I'm trying to hit the ball high. I let people overreact. That's what I'll say. It usually works out for us in the long run. And you said, yo, Luke, what's your betting card for this week? So I bet my 4 core picks. So that included Xander Schauffele. I bet him there on Monday. That was my card for the week. I got all of their opening numbers. So I got like plus 750 on a ROM, comparable numbers for the rest there for what they are at the end of the week. But of course, Xander, if I knew about the injury, I wouldn't have bet him. So those are the 4 players I'm on. I didn't add anything. And he says, do you think Wise and Hughes put up the same numbers or will they fall off? Well, I'll say Clay, though most of the time these players fall off. It's hard to back up a low round on the tour. You'll hear that from a bunch of analysts out there. And even more so when you're like a middle to lower tier player in the field. And it's not like they're a middle lower tier players on tour, right? Wise and Hughes, played fantastically in 2022, but in this sort of field, they're not the cream of the crop. So for us to expect them to go out there and replicate that performance, I don't want to say it's less likely, right? Because these events are independent, right? What happens one day, we can't let that cloud our judgment for what we expect from the player the next day. But it's hard not to remember that it just never happens. Like these guys hardly ever go out there and replicate that performance. So I would bet against it, Clay, to answer your question there. although it's not impossible. I'll mention that, right? Like from the stat perspective, that's why I want to mention that they're independent events. Like so many times, us analysts, and I'm doing it right now, right? I'm like kind of like calling myself out right here. We're like, oh, he played well one day, he's not going to do well the next, or he played really well round one, so he has to play well in round two. It's not necessarily the case, right? There's a lot of volatility there, but yeah, I think they fall off. Particularly Hughes. I think Wise, if one of the two is going to continue it, it would be an Aaron Wise because his putting wasn't outrageous in round one. His ball striking carried him. That's kind of what we're used to seeing from an Aaron Wise. Whereas Mackenzie Hughes, the ball striking can be extremely inconsistent. So if I was going to bet on one, it would be a Wise. Is Hideki back? He looked good yesterday. Yeah, hopefully he doesn't wake up with a cramped neck, though. So we'll have to see. I think he's going to have a good 2023. I think he's just underrated in general. Somebody who he can still win golf tournaments. He can still win major championships. That was obvious when he went out there and won the Masters. But people, with some of the recent back injuries, I think are just throwing him into the fire. And I think that's a little bit disrespectful. He's still got it. I think he's still at least a top 10, top 15 player on the PGA Tour. And any one of those players can win a major championship this year. So, yeah, I think he's back. I like seeing it. First time seeing this, what is the hole 15 shots? Yeah, so what they shoot on hole 15. It's a 540-yard par 5. So yeah, when we go over to PrizePicks, I'll actually bring up the stats from today. There was a 54% birdie or better rate. So if you're taking the round one stats, if you took anybody at random, you'd have like a 54% chance of hitting. The unfortunate part is with those props is that they chose the worst players in the field, the guys that are going to have the lowest birdie rates out of everyone in the field. So rather than it being like a 54-46 sort of split, like what we saw there in round one, it's probably closer to 50-50. So not my favorite category, but yeah, that's what it is. You were spot on. Also, Scotty missed like 3 to 4 putts on the back nine. That's good to hear. I'm playing him a bunch on PrizePicks. He's somebody we're going to talk about a little bit later. And I don't hate him in DFS. Now that I'm thinking about the ROM fade, there's a chance I may end up pivoting here in the last hour to somebody like a Scotty Scheffler. If I do so, that of course will be posted on the Patreon, any changes that I make. But yeah, I like them on PrizePicks. They have them at 6.5 birdies. They have JT and they have Rom at 7 birdies, which I think makes sense. Getting to 8 birdies is going to be difficult, but 6.5 for Scheffler, that's a pretty tasty prop. So hopefully that doesn't get bumped. Yeah, you agree? That's your thought process. Yeah, it's very random, but yeah, glad we agree there. And Tanner says, do you target specific contests in Showdown? Yes. So it depends on your aspirations. So I'll say that. Personally, I'm all about boom or bust on Showdown. Anything I enter into a Showdown contest, particularly for rounds 2 and 3, I enter them with the idea that most of them are dead, right? To win a Showdown, especially one of those large field GPPs, you need the nuts. And a lot of times that's leaving salary on the table. It's taking players that are like 0.5, 1% owned. I tend to take a hyper aggressive strategy and target the 20 maxes. So the largest 20 max that they put out for a Showdown slate, I'm almost always going to max that. If they have one of the larger field 150 maxes, if they don't have a 20 max that's really calling my eye, sometimes I'll throw 5 to 10 lineups in the large field GPP. Those are what I stick with. Now, if you're trying to grind ROI, the cash contests are fantastic. With Showdown, I've had a few of my buddies, DGen75, me and him were talking about this the other day. He said that the cash contests for Showdown are like the most money-making thing that he's ever seen, because people go out there and they just play all the mega chalk. And you guys know how cash works, right? The chalk just gets even more chalky. So identifying those top cash plays becomes really easy, because you know that the guys at the top of the leaderboard are going to be 35 to sometimes 50, 60% owned in those contests. So all you have to do is cross out those players in cash and just play the best guys in the field, other than maybe those top to 5 to 6 guys. And at least from some of the buddies I have that have played it, it sounds like it's going really well. So it depends. It depends, Tanner. If you're looking for ROI, just trying to grind it out over a few weeks, that's probably the way to go. That's personally not what I do. But hey, the large show GBPs, that's my vice out there when it comes to DFS. I have a lot of fun with those. Let's get back into this player pool, then hop over to PrizePicks. We'll probably spend another 5 minutes over here on Showdown. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to go ahead and fire them down in chat. In this middle tier range, top of the 7K, I love a Max Homa. I love a Jordan Spieth. Both of them extremely high birdie or better percentage players, cheaper than they were for 4-round contests. And you can see Spieth is 17% owned, right? He had a decent round here on Thursday, but he's not chalk by any means. He's slightly higher owned than your average player in the field, which I'm more than willing to get to. Sam Burns, another hyper aggressive player. Anytime I'm playing Showdown, I'm looking for those hyper aggressive players. A Sam Burns comes to mind. Cameron Young, who we talked about earlier, Victor Hovland, all of these sort of players are top 20 birdie or better percentage players, right? They're not just some of the best players in the world. They're the most aggressive. They go after it, right? They're trying to shoot 7, 8, 9 under par consistently out there. And sometimes it's going to blow up in their face, right? They're going to go out there, shoot something like 2 to 3 over par, get the negative end of that volatility. But in Showdown, we don't care about that, right? Especially if we're playing GPPs. We're looking for that top end upside. If they end up busting out, like I said, so be it, right? That's why you play in those large field contests. That's really why I like targeting these aggressive players. And pretty much every time a Homa, Spieth, Cameron Young, and Burns are in a Showdown slate, I'll just say this right now, they're going to be in my player pool. I honestly can't think of a time, unless they were super mega chalk, like 30, 40% owned, that those sort of guys wouldn't be in my pool. Like if they're low owned and they're in the golf tournament, they're going to be in my pool. That's how I handle Showdown. There's guys that I love playing on Showdown because they have that top end upside. And then there's guys, and just to give you the counter example, right? Like a Brian Harman. Brian Harman is the antithesis of a Showdown play. He's hyper conservative, loves hitting to the center of greens. His birdie or better percentage is a lot lower than some of his peers. And though he's consistent, he makes a bunch of cuts. He finishes in the top 30 quite often. He doesn't ever win. Like, when's the last time that Brian Harman won a golf tournament? Right? He has a bunch of like top 5 finishes. He's able to get into contention, but he doesn't always have that top end potential, that ceiling that we're looking for, which is, at least in the GPPs that I'm playing, it's prohibitive. It keeps me off of those sort of players. Hideki, I'm still on. I know we talked about him a little bit earlier. He's definitely got upside at 7,600. He's super cheap. Loves Sahith Theegala, another hyper aggressive player. Same thing with Gsluke, right? I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I would rather play a Gsluke, a Sahith Theegala, than some of their counterparts like a Billy Horschel and Aaron Wise, who's also a little bit chalky, and Adam Scott. These sort of players that don't really go after it as much, right? They play a little bit safer. They play smarter. A lot of them, coincidentally, are older players. And it makes sense, right? You get a little bit wiser as you go on, you become a little bit less of a daredevil, right? As you get up there in age. Whereas Sahith Theegala, Gsluke, all of these young guns, they don't know what they don't know, right? They don't have any of that scar tissue. I mean, I've seen Sahith Theegala shoot 8 over par before. That was at the CJ Cup this year, round 1. And he wasn't even that mad about it. Like, he was just like kind of like doing his own thing, moseying around. That was also the tournament where I gave him a jab on accident, told him that he was having a great round because I thought it said -8 instead of +8. Yeah, he doesn't know what he doesn't know, right? He's aggressive. He's going to go for it almost every single time. Scott Stallings, super cheap. I also like the upside with him. Svensson, I like Svensson at -2. Same thing with Straka. Both are in single digits. So now you're talking about true pivots down here. Same thing with Scott Stallings. He's only 7% owned. You add 1, maybe 2 of the players down here in the 6K range to a lineup, you're going to be well on your way to being unique. So that's what the dual utility of them. They're giving you the extra salary to spend up top, but they're also giving you that ownership leverage to try and differentiate your lineup. JT Poston, Luke List, Trey Molnax, all adequate options as well. So that's it for the Showdown side. We're going to hop over to PrizePicks after we answer some questions. So give me a second here. Alex says, any other good-looking props on PrizePicks? We'll be there in a second. Just give me 2 minutes. We'll be on the PrizePicks side. Antonio says, Spieth is always guaranteed to miss a 2-footer every tournament, at least. I mean, he might miss 2 or 3 here, right? He missed his first one there in round 1. Yeah, it's tilting, especially when you have like a birdie prop and it's like a 2-footer for birdie. That's when it's extra tilting. And Adam says Keegan Day. So Keegan or Theegala. So I would take Theegala as your last piece. He's just got more upside. And I guess it depends on the contest. If you're in a single entry or a cash contest, I'm a little bit more willing to play a Keegan Bradley. But if you're in that large field GPP going against, at 2,000 plus entries, yeah, go with Theegala. He's got the upside you're looking for. And Antonio says, Im is sneaky -7. Yeah, and he lost strokes putting in round 1. He went out there, he gained off the tee, he had a bunch of greens as well, and lost strokes putting. So yeah, he fits that exact mold that I'm looking for of players that have the ball striking and just need the luck to come around on the green. So yeah, I'm all in on him. I like him on PrizePicks too, which speaking of PrizePicks, boys, let's get into this. So Up and over to that side, let's go through the few of the props that I like. So a few of them got bumped already. The number one prop, this is like the one of the only ones left on the board that hasn't been bumped at this point. Scotty Scheffler over 6.5 birdies. I don't understand why he's not at 7, like a Rahm, JT, and Colin Morikawa. He played beautifully in round 1. He made the 7 birdies that we were looking for, and he couldn't make a putt for his life. He hit all 18 greens. He hit a bunch of fairways yesterday. Like, I sincerely don't understand the pricing. He should be at 7 birdies. He should probably be better on the strokes board as well. So unless they know something that we don't know, which we know, guys, sometimes Vegas has a lot of that luck going for him. It looks like a really solid prop to target. Let's see. We had bumps on Sanjay and Jordan Spieth. They were at 6 birdies. At 6.5, they're no longer the same sort of play. But Tom Kim at 6.5, I do like. So he was another guy who started at 6.5 like Scotty and hasn't moved yet. And something that I guess I should have talked about before, because if you guys were watching ESPN Plus, you may have heard a nugget yesterday that no one knew about going into the week, and that this is Tom Kim's home course. He has lived in, I believe, 6 or 7 different countries throughout his life, but I didn't know this until I heard it on the broadcast. He lived the longest in Hawaii. He lived in there for over 5-6 years on Maui, and literally Kapalua is where he played most of his golf growing up. In fact, he said he has at least a couple thousand rounds around Kapalua, which just blew my mind to hear. I was like, okay, well, I guess Tom Kim really likes this golf course. And then he started hooping shots for eagle, right? He had that one eagle on the par 4, ended up holding a shot on the front 9 for an eagle. The putts weren't even dropping for him. So the ball striking carried him in round 1. I have to think that somebody that's played this golf course numerous times has to know the greens. And we know that Tom Kim, at least in his small sample size, is one of the better putters that we've seen on the PGA Tour. So all of that screams to me just absolute smash pick. So yeah, Tom Kim and the Scotty Scheffler props here are by far my favorite props on the entire slate. Honestly, I liked them more than Sungjae Im and Jordan Spieth, and those were the ones they bumped first, rather than these guys at 6.5 birdies. So hey, that's fine with me. Fine for all of you guys out there. I'm sure that can go out there and bet that now. The other props I kind of have my eye on are these fairway props. So at the beginning, I talked about some of the rates. In round 1, the average fairway percentage, I believe, was 10% lower than what we had the year before. But more importantly, it was only 10.5 fairways. So you have the whole board is priced above 10.5, right? The lowest players are at 11. So you have to think that unders are potentially the move here. Guys like a JT that aren't accurate. Same thing with a Hideki Matsuyama. You could consider them for unders on fairways. And if you're going to take an under on fairways, you want it to be a bomber. And there's 2 reasons why it has to be a bomber if you're going to take an under on fairways today. Hole number 1 and hole number 14. Hole number 1 is a 520-yard par 4 where you can either lay up with a 3-wood off the tee and leave yourself 200 yards into the green, or you can hit a driver. The issue with hole number 1 is if you lay up, it's like the easiest fairway in human history. If you go for it and you try to hit the driver, you have a 0% chance of hitting it in the fairway. Literally 0. If you hit it over a certain hill on hole number 1, it's not possible to keep it in the shortstop. It's literally impossible. Every single player today that hit driver ended up overshooting the fairway. So the shorter players, like a Brian Harman, who we took in round 1, the over on, right? He was at 11.5 fairways, if you guys remember, is a shorter player. He laid up on hole number 1, right? So he had the guaranteed fairway in hole number 1. Hole 14 is a drivable par 4. It's a 280-yard par 4 uphill, so playing closer to 300 yards. Shorter players like a Seamus Power, a Brian Harman, for example, laid up off the tee. They hit an iron off the tee, put themselves in position, and yet again had another gimme fairway. Whereas a JT, Hideki Matsuyama, are hitting driver at that green. They're certainly hitting driver on hole number 1. And I'll say this, Hideki didn't hit driver on hole number 1 yesterday. I would expect him to do it today. It was kind of like a bonkers decision for me that he went out there and hit a 3-wood there in day 1. These aggressive players are the ones that you want to target. Not a Brian Harman, not a Matt Fitzpatrick, who laid up there in hole number 1 yesterday as well. I guess that would be it. I guess Tom Kim, you would add him to that conversation too. Those are the guys that you don't want to fade when it comes to the fairway props, because they're going to get those really tough fairways that a lot of the rest of the field can't bank on. So that's something I wanted to point out about that board. There's an intricacy involved, obviously, with some of the holes. Hole 15 props. I don't hate the under on some of these. So like Sepp Straka, Billy Horschel, These are solid options for the under. Both of them long enough off the tee to reach into. I'd say they're average players for the field. And like we talked about a little bit earlier, the average for hole 15 was a 54% birdie or better rate. So you guys can see up here, right? I can't move my cursor or else I would. It has a 51% birdie rate and a 3% eagle rate, right? So 54% of the field would have covered that prop. So you can't just take anybody, right? So like a Ches Reavie, who's not long off the tee, a Chad Ramey, who's also a relatively short player off the tee. I'm not quite as sold on as on those two players as I am on these guys that are a little bit longer. So how many props do we have here? 6, right? Okay, so we'll probably keep it at that. There's not a lot of green and regulation props I like. This Scotty Scheffler, I take the under at 16 greens. I know he hit all 18 in round 1, guys, but to only have one miss to work with before you're looking at a push on that second miss is ridiculous. Like I know these are world-class tour players, but you hit at least 1 to 2 bad shots per round. And if you hit 2 bad shots, you're at best pushing, right? Let alone if you end up having something unlucky happen, and it could get even worse. So if I was going to take anything, it'd be like an under on Scotty, but the rest of the boards just, I think it's fairly priced. Birdie or better matchups, there actually is one birdie or better matchup I like. This Tony Finau over versus JJ Spawn is pretty decent. Spawn is about an average. I would say, no, he's definitely a below average player for this field. That's undoubtedly true. And Tony Finau is like a top 5 to 10 player. So the talent gap is pretty large there. I've seen a lot of people on this Sungjae Im one. I don't like it. I'll just say that. So if anybody out there is wondering about that prop, I don't like it. And I saw a lot of people on this Scotty Scheffler versus Burns one. I wouldn't play that either. Sam Burns is an absolute fucking madman and is more than capable of making more birdies than Scotty Scheffler. Even though I love Scheffler today, right? I have him for over 6.5 birdies. Sam Burns could make 9 birdies. It wouldn't surprise me. He's that sort of player. Let's see what else we've got. Strokes. Yeah, and Strokes isn't my favorite. If you're going to take anything, guys, I mean, like, let's look at the difference here. Scotty's got to get 7 birdies to cover his line, right? To cover his line at 67.5, he's got to shoot 6 under par. That's a 1 birdie difference. And plenty of the players yesterday, in fact, most of the field had at least 1 bogey on the day. If you end up hitting 1 tee shot out of bounds, right, that's just absolutely going to screw you. So I would stay away from the strokes props. I would just go with birdie or better. It seems safer. You don't have to worry about one of those astray shots just absolutely screwing you. And that's the direction I would go. So let's see if there's any questions down there. Let's see. Bump incoming. Yeah, I can see that. Let's see. So Tom Kim's looking out of place with the Nike stuff. I'm pretty happy for the kid. He's cashing out. Those Nike contracts are fat contracts. He's making hella money. He's like 19 years old. He'll grow into it, right? He might look a little weird for right now in the Nike stuff. He'll grow into it. Ewan says your shit show play of the day is Svensson. Yeah, he might get there. Who knows? I didn't play him going into this week or in Showdown for round 1, but I'm definitely playing him for round 2. Like that guy. He's kind of like a Cameron Tringale, who we used to see a lot on the PGA Tour. Who else? A Peter Malnati comes to mind. Sam Burns is another one of those just madmen of players where like he'll shoot 3-4 over par one day and the next day shoot like 7-8 under. Just the guy has no conscience, right? What happens the day before means nothing to somebody like a Svenny. So I like it. I don't know if it's a shit show play. I think you're onto something there. Joshua says thoughts on Corey Connors. He's okay. I have kind of like a personal vendetta against Corey Connors because he's just such a low upside play. He's kind of like a Brian Harman. So I'll put it this way. He's extremely consistent. He's going to make a bunch of cuts. He's going to finish in the top 25 a lot, which is okay. If you're betting top 25 markets, that's fantastic. But if you're playing a DFS, he doesn't always bring that top end upside. If you're playing even props for Corey Connors, he doesn't make a bunch of birdies. So I'm lukewarm on him. I don't love him. I don't hate him, but it depends on the contest. If you're in a cash contest, love Corey Connors. Like I said, top 25 market from the betting perspective, love Corey Connors. But outside of that, not so much. Bumping coming, yeah, it happens all the time. Wouldn't surprise me. Adam says Homa or Kim in a single entry. So considering ownership, Kim's going to be a lot higher owned in single entries than he is in GPPs. I would go with Homa because Homa is going to be even more of a pivot in that single entry contest. And truth be told, both of them are similar players. So that's the way that I'd go. Tony says, thoughts on Braceface? He looked pretty good yesterday. Yeah, so I bet him over there on PrizePicks for fairways, and he couldn't hit a fairway for his life, but was hitting solid iron shots. Like you said, the scoring was there. He shot, I believe, 6, perhaps even 7 under par. Let's double check on that. I know Braceface had a pretty decent day. Let's see. Yeah, 7 under par. I mean, yeah, and I have nothing against Braceface here. I'm actually starting to come around on the kid, okay? When he started adding the distance off the tee, starting to look a little bit less like a prepubescent teen, I'm starting to like Braceface a little bit more. And as he starts to make me a little bit more money on DFS, you start to like the guy a little bit more. So, I don't know. We're coming around on him. Andrew Vogel says, Rom only hit 5 fairways. He's got to be a lock. Yeah, you can put him under for that 11 fairway mark. That's actually that's one of the guys I played on the side. So, yeah, great pick there. I definitely agree with you. Antonio says, do you ever play a 2-ball? If you do, any thoughts on the matchups? Not particularly, especially when I'm playing DFS. I got PrizePicks going on, all that sort of stuff. At majors, I'm a lot more willing to add those sort of bets, but it's not something that I've looked at to this point. So if you remind me here in a few minutes, I'll go take a look at the board, unless you know if anything stands out. But I haven't bet anything on that side yet. Rhett says, what's the reasoning behind Scotty and Tom Kim birdie or better? So yeah, sure, I'll go over that. The average today was 6.1 birdies. 6.13. I should say the average yesterday was 6.13 birdies. Scotty Scheffler was able to cover that line. So we got to 7 birdies in round 1, losing strokes putting. Tom Kim, same thing, right? He was able to cover a 6.5 birdie line, losing strokes putting. You're talking about 2 players that are, in my opinion, top 10 players in the world. Scotty Scheffler, right? He's world number 2. Tom Kim, I think, is going to easily be a top 10, probably even a top 5 player in the world come the end of this year. You wouldn't expect that to happen 2 days in a row, right? And then they already covered the line. So if they improve the putting, they're in line to make something like 8, 9 birdies, let alone the 7 they need to cover like they did yesterday. So that's the reasoning there. Honestly, you could say that for a lot of the players in the field, right? So some of these guys, even at 6.5 birdies still, like the reason why I liked Sanjay, Sanjay was one of the other picks that I had, and Jordan Spieth, is both of them also lost strokes putting in round 1. And they had great ball striking stats. So that's why I like a majority of the picks that I'm on are players that are striking it better than they're scoring. And if they're able to go out there and putt a little bit better, are going to do even better. So that's the idea. Antonio says, wait, they changed the pairings today. Do you know why? Yeah, so since it's a no-cut event, they change it after each day, right? So normally they keep it the same because of weather draw to make sure that people are getting the same conditions for rounds 1 and 2. So there's no unfair cut line. But because there's no cut this week, they reshuffle after each round. So that's why they're doing that. Mike says, do you think Cantlay comes around? Potentially. He didn't play that poorly in round 1, truth be told. He just didn't make a lot of those 10 to 15 footers. The ball striking was there. He really hit 16 greens. He hit 14 yesterday, but 2 of them were fringes. I tend to think so. I think that the putter is definitely going to be there. It's just, you hope the ball striking is too, right? Like I said, he hit 16 greens, like in reality, if he does that, he's normally shooting 7 to 8 under par. Like Cantlay, we know the putter's going to be there, right? That's what we count on Patrick Cantlay doing. And he wasn't able to do that there. So that was a little bit concerning, but I don't know. I'm not that worried about it. He should figure out the putter. And if he does, he's going to be a damn good play. Coy says, Im or Kim? Love it. I would say Kim. You have similar ownership numbers. Let's see. So we have Tom Kim is 24.8% owned. And where's Sanjay? Sanjay's 31.4. So Tom Kim's a little bit lower owned. And I think they're the same play. Like if you look at my modeling, it loves Tom Kim. Obviously, the experience factor is favoring a Sanjay M. I would go with Tom Kim. He's lower owned, and I think a better play. Let's see what else we got. And Antonio says, on FanDuel, Connors is plus 155 against Harman. Oh my God, they put those 2 together? Of course they did. Of course they put those 2 together. But yes, 155 on Connors versus Harman would be a bet. 100% would be a bet. They're essentially the same player, and Connors long-term is better than Brian Harman. Like Brian Harman might be a little bit more consistent, but Connors is posting more of those top 5, top 10 finishes, at least in bigger field events. Yeah, I would go Connors as well, for sure. What's the bottom play? Good question. So let me show you. It's there's actually a few of them down here. So I'll scroll down to the bottom, like 4. It was JT fairways under, and then a few other props there for hole 15 that we were going with. And Antonio says, is Morikawa becoming a must play? It's getting close to it, right? If he comes out here and he finishes in the top 3 this week, it might be one of those horses for courses situation where a player is extremely comfortable at this track. You see it with Jordan Spieth at Pebble Beach, KH Lee over there at the Byron Nelson, TPC Lee, as we like to call him at this point. Yeah, there's in Hovland, right? Think about Mayakoba. Hovland at the Hero World Challenge has a lot of success. Yeah, it's a thing. So I don't know. We have to have a large enough sample size to make it actionable, but he's well on his way to being that sort of play. So yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on it. But that is all I've got here for the stream here for round 2, guys. We're going to cut it off at that point. Thank you for stopping by, enjoying the content, showing all your support here in the channel as per usual. Best of luck with any of your bets or any of your slips here from round 1. On your way out of here, go ahead and smash that like button if you feel like you learned a little bit during the stream. And hopefully we can go out there and cash out. I mean, it was nice to, make a little bit of money there on Thursday. We about 1.75x. But now it's the weekend, right? We want a little bit of extra money, a little bit of extra units in the bankroll. Let's try and make it a truly epic day. So hopefully all of you out there have a fantastic weekend. Expect to see a stream tomorrow at right around the same time, maybe a little bit earlier. I would assume right around midday for round 3. It will be doing the same thing, going through the Showdown slate, going through the PrizePicks board, any of your questions. So looking forward to it. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you are so you don't miss that content in the future. And peace out, boys.